Hello everyone, my name is Shola Abulu. I'm the principal consultant of Sola Abulu and Associates. I hope you can hear me. And I'm here to do this. I just want to do this short presentation about the role of media relations in crisis management. You may or may, depending on when you watch this, you may have noticed that we'll be doing a series on crisis management. So this is, we've done the role of internal communications. If you haven't seen that, check it out. And now this is the role of media relations. And if you're watching this on YouTube, please subscribe. We see that a lot of you just walk past. You watch and then you walk past. Please stay on and follow us. Yeah, and subscribe. Okay, so let's get into it. 12 points. So we have quite a bit to go on. So first of all, media risk management. And before I even get into that, what's media relations? Media relations is that aspect of PR and communications that deals with how you manage the media as a whole. This is one of the really early portions of PR, public relations, started off like really back in the day. In fact, the core of public relations as we know it has always been about managing the media, managing the headlines. And what you mean are media platforms, both legacy, TV, news, radio. Many of the legacy media today, they also have social media online presence, and they're really big. And the thing about media relations is this, and I see a lot of people, not the real PR people know the difference between the media organizations. So, for instance, there's local media, there's national media, there's regional media. When a story is carried by the big players, it's major. If it's just staying within the local news, it's something. If it shows up in your community papers too, it's a big thing, but only in the community. Once it gets to those national newspapers, it can become national. Once it crosses into international media, you're in a different space. As in that is so you have to understand that as a comms professional and also as a business and organizational leader. If something comes up and it's being showed by carried by BBC, Reuters, Daily Mail, and then there's a difference between traditional business papers and then tabloids. International tabloids, oh my goodness, particularly the UK tabloids, you are in another zone. So if you don't understand this, you have to understand the media landscape in your own country, then in the region, then international. All of these are things that every core communications professional needs to know. And to be honest, pet peeve here, allow me to vent a bit. I feel really bad and sad that a lot of us comms people, we're only exposed to, because people just use us and people do not, we work for organizations that just, they just use your skills. Nobody is really, there's no all round competence development going on. Many of us just go on in one track and we do not understand. For instance, I was in PR for a very long time and had very little exposure to media relations, whereas media relations is everything that every comms person should know how to. You should understand media risk, you should know how to manage it, you should know what media landscape is. This should be foundation for everyone when you start out, and it unfortunately is not so. But as I'm thinking about it, because I actually had a course, we have a course on that, which we have not run for some years, but it is really important. So this is not just for you, whether you're a media relations specialist or not. If you're a communications professional, these are the things that you should know. So even though we're not talking about media relations, we're talking about it in the context of crisis management. This will give you a window into what media relations is really all about. And if you're going to work for a corporate communications organization, this is very important. It may not be so important to you if you're working for like a very, very small business or you're just a social media account manager or that kind of thing. But even if you're a social media account manager and one day you have a crisis, in fact, I would say every comms professional needs to know these things because you don't know when you will need to deploy those skills. And it's not then that you will now start, you know, telling everybody what that you don't know this, you don't know that. So let's get right into it therefore. Okay. So having done a little bit of a segue into what media relations is all about. So media risk management, and I've talked about this. This is, in a crisis situation, you have to ensure that media coverage is balanced and it does not get out of hand or cause irreparable damage to reputation. That's an important part. So we're talking about the role of media relations in crisis management. So when you have a crisis, you need to have somebody looking at what is really happening in the media space and making sure that what the media is saying, whether it's traditional or digital, is not getting out of hand, is not going to cause irreparable damage. It's really, really important that you keep an eye on that. And then the second thing, so that's that. So media risk management. So because if you don't keep an eye on that, and when I say it's balanced, okay, so as if it's a crisis, and a crisis is something that is not good. So when it's a crisis, there's negative coverage. It's not often that you can just turn negative into positive, particularly if it's really something, something really bad happened and you can't take it away and you can't deny it. So what you look for is balanced coverage, whereby your own side of the story is being shared so that there's context. And if you have a very well written press statement or response, it should balance it out a bit, particularly if you're an ethical company. In fact, you should balance it out. I can't go too much into the details of that. But if it's not balancing it out, of course, you should be monitoring, using your AI sentiment analysis and all that. Then you're not managing that media risk well. Because if it continues to get more and more negative, then there's a big problem. So that is what a media relations specialist should be watching out for, or a corporate comms or a comms person that knows how to handle media in crisis. Again, if you don't know how to, please get a specialist to help you out. Shaping media response. So that's another thing. You have to be able to craft the messaging that strikes the right tone and addresses the issues at stake. Now, this expands on what I had mentioned. It's all part of the risk management, media risk management. Because if you understand what's going on, how it's being reported in the media, the narrative that is unfolding, you know what you need to say. And this is, I really want to make a point here, because some people think it's just about saying, just responding. No, they just think, well, let's just respond, let's just say something. No, don't just say something. If it's a crisis, not issue now. Issue is, okay, there's an issue. Crisis is that the people they're about to shut down your operation. Do you understand? You are if you don't manage this well, your business is going to go bust, or your organization will lose its credibility. Then you have to be careful of what you're saying. So you have to have a response that provides context. Okay, yes, this is what is being reported, but this is the true situation of things, or this is how we got here, this is why this is happening. Then you talk about care as well. This is what we're doing and all of that. And then what is your commitment? And what is the control that you're doing to bring this under control, if this is applicable? And then what's the commitment that you're making as an organization? We're going to keep updating you. Let's assume like there's flooding crisis in Lagos now. If you're on the side of the state government and you want to respond on that, these forces should be there, because first of all, you have to give some context about what is causing this flood, and then the care, people who have lost property and all of that. What are, how acknowledge that, this is a bad situation, and then what are you doing to control this, and then what is the commitment that you're making going forward? That's really how it is, as practical as that. And this is all things you do in the media, because at the end of the day, the media is the platform that provides that opportunity to tell your story and to balance it and to make people feel at least you know what you're doing. 3, media messaging. And assuming, I'm giving the experience of a flooding crisis, even though it's been pretty bad, but imagine if it was a much worse. You would really have to do this to a very big level, because people will have a lot of questions and they're looking for answers, and you must be able to provide it. So media messaging now. So what is the tailored messaging that ensures clarity, accuracy, and strategic alignment, with organizational objectives in terms of what you would like to come out from that crisis? It has to be tailored. Please look at that word, tailored. Tailored means tailored. I can't explain it better than that. I mean, you can look at the suit the lady is wearing there. She's wearing a tailored suit. It's tailored to her body shape, her shoulder length, and everything. If you can't take that suit and give it to somebody else who has a different, in fact, you could even tailor it a bit better. It has a bit of a loose fit, so it's not 100% tailored. But for someone else, it won't work at all. That's exactly how messaging is. It has to be fitted, tightly fitted for purpose. It must not be too loose. It must not be too tight, but it has to just right, strike the right tone, address the issue, instill confidence, and build trust. Then integration of social and traditional media. This is very important for the world that we live in today. I talked a bit about that, about how these days there's a lot of intersection between traditional and social media, because we have traditional media, like in Nigeria, we have channels, TV news, they have online presence. Their online presence are strong, sometimes even stronger than their TV presence, because most of us watch them on YouTube or Twitter or anything, and they are so good at it. They've perfected that mobile first strategy, that in such a way that everything that happens on TV, we get the mobile digital version of it. So, when you're doing your crisis communications response, always make sure that even if you are showing up in the media, or you're going into the TV station or everything, you are doing it with a TV station that has a strong online presence as well. But if you really need to get that story out, because not everyone's going to be watching TV. Very few people watch TV. So you have to do that TV to traditional to digital interplay, and then you look for the outlets that provide that. I would always say, generally for me, if I'm doing a crisis communication, or any campaign, I'm always looking for stations that are very heavy on mobile. In Nigeria, I'm talking people like Business Day. Their Instagram page is very high. Nairametrics, their Instagram page is very high as well. Channels TV on all platforms, they're on fire. So you can't miss with Channels TV. Arise TV too. Their Twitter, they've embraced social in the best way possible, and all the international outlets have the same way. So you really need to make sure, because if you go and use one TV station that all they do is they are only on TV. Again, there's a whole package around making sure that all of these things are commercial. But if you need to use them, be sure that you use them intelligently. I won't talk too much about that, but you also have to make sure that the messaging across all platforms is the same. So you cannot be saying one thing in your news, appearance, and there's something else on your own pages or something else on your websites. Everything must be aligned, and you must know how to integrate both traditional and social. So that's the role of media relations. This is very important, particularly, like I said, it's a crisis that you need to get your story out. Like imagine like that flooding crisis I gave, which is going on in Lagos, also in Lagos really, and also in parts of along the west coast of Africa, because Accra also experienced a bit of it. So the communications around that has to be really tight, has to get out to a lot of people. So you need to handle that well. So your media platform strategy, that's number 5. And this is again, I've alluded to this. This is how you identify, or the process by which you identify the most relevant platforms that you need to leverage on based on your audience mapping and the issue at hand. Again, don't go overboard. If it is something that is playing out in a community, then you keep the conversation at that community level. If it's playing out in the media, then by all means, you have to have a very strong media response, and be careful about the platforms that you choose. Remember what I said about, if you need to you have to know the ones that have a national reach, a local reach. If you've chosen the wrong platform, your message is going to sink. Nobody is not going to reach the people that it needs. So you have to take a very outcome driven approach to how you manage your media response. And yeah, that's that. So media content strategy, again, the format of your content. I talked about that if you go on the news, make sure it's a digital first channel you're working with. Some stories are better told with images, so think about that. There's a place for editorial, there's a place for just putting an infographic with text. There's also a place for video, moving images. I mean, again, I give the example of the flooding crisis. If you need to show that you have taken, you have handled it, you can't be issuing press release. You need to do videos on site and send us short videos, 30 seconds of what's going on and all that. You need to do a little bit of infographics to show the diagrams or the topography, and give us a little bit of analysis as to why this is happening, the ocean levels, the land levels. These are things that you need to do to tell and show your story. So it's not just enough, again, like I said, that thing of, I'm just going to do a press statement, a microphone, and I'm talking, and that's it. No, that's not the way it's done in 21st century. You have to give us, to build credibility, you give us the information and the formats that we need for us to be able to understand what you're saying and see it from your point of view as well. So that's really, really important. And again, shareable content is the thing in today's world. So think of something that can also go on WhatsApp. So don't just make it something that will be embedded on platform and it can only go via link. The funny thing about these platforms, like if I share a Twitter link to somebody else, the person has to be on Twitter to access it. The same thing with LinkedIn. It's only YouTube. I think YouTube too is like that to a very large extent. So if you want something to really go viral in response, then you have to make it WhatsApp shareable. In other words, have the video version that you can feed into WhatsApp chat groups, and that's the easiest way to get things all around. Just tell all your, get people to put it in their estates, residential estate groups, their alumni chats, their student chats, family group chats. Before you know anything, is all over the place. But again, only do that if you are managing, like I would say, public service crisis or communications or that kind of thing, or political campaigns, or well, we're talking crisis management now, but some maybe like this flooding crisis, emergency response for like the Lagos state government or in Accra, Ghana, that kind of thing. So that's it. But don't box yourself into a corner that press statement, just text. If you need to show evidence, then please use static images, use video, moving pictures, all of that. Also voice to camera, face and voice. If the commissioner needs to speak, he must be seen speaking, and he's been doing all of that. So that's all part of the content strategy. It's all part of the media strategy. So media monitoring and sentiment analysis, number 7. And I kid you not, all these steps are important. This is, every media relations person knows this. I'm just itemizing this for those of us who may not have a day-to-day familiarity with media relations, therefore you do not know. So it's just for information. And for those of us, if you're watching this and this is something that you know and do, please put a validation comment in the comments, so that others can also learn and share your own experiences as well. I would really appreciate it if you do that. So media monitoring and sentiment analysis, you have to be able to track and maintain 24/7 vigilance. Remember, again, we're talking about crisis situation online and across all platforms, and include mentions and sentiments analysis. Clip that. So on what works for in terms of how the crisis is playing out and what needs to be done, just so that you're really on top of what's going on and you know when things are getting better, when it's getting more balanced, and if it's getting worse. And again, there are a lot of tools for this. I would always recommend Brand 24. I know that there are several others. There's one called Brand Mention, but again, yeah, I'm always open to hearing about more, and I'm sure